and welcome to another After Dark. We've got some very nice people for you to meet tonight. First couple of guys out of INXS. We have with us Michael Hutchence and Kirk Pengilly. And I hope I said that correctly, because they'll be in here shortly to knock me out if I didn't. Sammy Collins from 2JJJ, started off with 2JJ, is now with a Triple J. She'll be in a little later to talk to us. And a fella that's on his way at the moment, and we hope he gets here in time, the English, they used to call him a punk poet, and lately he's the bard of somewhere or other, a guy called John Cooper Clakre, lovely guy. We'll show you a single later on that you've probably never seen anything like it in your life. Plus, we've got Flash Gordon. He's up there in Mars, I think, tonight. He's been up there in Mars for quite some time. And a lot of good clips, too. What we're going to do is start with The Church, A Different Man, the current single, and then we'll have Tommy Boyce, Bobby Hart, You're Still My Favourite Girlfriend, Alice Long. But first, The Church. With your best shot, Pat Benatar, from INXS. We have Michael and we have Kirk. Thanks very much. I got Pengilly right, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
For the first time in my life. Because they usually say, oh, Pengilly's coming out, you know? And I thought, hang on, not with that spelling.
No way.
I just thought I'd check it out. I wanted to ask you, right from the beginning, the start of 1982 was very quiet. You were off the road and all that. Now you've ended on a high note with a hit single and a hit album. What were you actually doing in that early part of 82? Why were you off the road?
We originally planned not to go off the road to actually do a tour overseas and maybe even an album or something, but we took the time off because we couldn't play because we didn't have a record company because we left our record company, so it's something as boring as that.
But it was, what happened there with the record company?
We just wanted a different contract, I guess.
Time to move on.
More money?
Yeah,
better deal or whatever?
Better deal.
Yeah.
more license to do what we want to do, I guess. And,
we're actually waiting for our gold records from RCA, and they still haven't showed up.
Sounds, didn't you?
Yeah.
They never
They still haven't showed up.
This is a sore point. Yeah.
Anyway, moving away from that, but still, while you're off the road, I read somewhere that you said, well, it gave us time to get our heads into gear and to write and all that. Were you actually thinking of maybe, after 3 years of non-stop work, throwing it all away at that stage?
No.
No?
Well, yes, we all... No. No, actually, funnily enough, because we had that time off, it let us reassess a lot of things and just, discuss a lot of things that you don't really have time to discuss while you're out on the road and recording and just... it also got us off the road live,
Yeah.
And you've got to have a dynamic in your own life to have a dynamic on stage, those things, so...
gave us a whole new energy.
Yeah, it was a bit of a new lease of life.
New surge.
It really is a thing that you really, in this country, can't stay on the road 12 months a year, can you? And hope to continue improving, because people, well, you're overexposed, virtually, aren't you?
It depends. If you can afford to travel interstate all the time, like even as far as Perth and, wherever, you can do it, but I mean, it's so time-consuming and so draining if you're just consistently on the road, and you've got to have time to rehearse. And
I think we're fairly particular now, actually, with when and where we play. You have to be.
Did you write a lot of the stuff that's on this new album at that stage of the year?
Well, there was half of us in England writing, Kirk and Andrew and myself, and the rest of the band were in Australia writing. So when we got back together again, it's the first time we've done where just about everybody's contributed. Something. Johnny and Tim wrote a song. Gary didn't.
It was funny actually, because when we were in London, the other guys were sort of writing, and the main writing up until this album had really been Andrew and Michael, the keyboard player, and we're talking to our manager in Australia, and he's saying, gee, the guys over here are getting some really hot songs together, and we're going, and here we are having great time in London. Whoops.
So pull the rabbit out of the hat.
We got stuck into writing over there.
How would you describe this album, Mike? This current album? What would you call it? A love album? An album full of love songs?
It's I think it's a much more complete album from track 1, side 1 to last track on side 2. By the time you've gone through the whole album like that, you've got a much more balanced collection of songs, but the lyrics have changed a bit, and they're much more emotionally orientated, I guess.
Now, I read somewhere else that you had said that you write what's going on around, and you obviously had a bad year or a few months prior to then, or turmoil in your private life. Is that correct?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Well, I usually can only write about what seems to apply to myself or my surroundings or my friends or whatever, and so it must be that way. I'll have to explain it that way anyway.
Where did Jan's song come from? I'll ask you, Kirk.
Well, ask Michael.
No. I thought you might be a zinger to upset him, you know?
Yeah.
Is that a past...
Oh, it's Andrew. We had met somebody in Melbourne called Jane who used to come down to where we're staying, and we'd talk for hours on end about her plight, you know. She's quite young and living out in the suburbs in Frankston. And from there, I think Andrew started a few lines, and then he showed it to me, and I added a few lines to that.
It was a culmination of you two, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a bit of license. It's about Jan, that actual girl.
So it wasn't a
True
great love
life.
affair.
No. It's more of a song about you know, the plight of somebody trying to either convince what's around, you know, people around her, etc., to change or leave, and she ends up sort of leaving and saying, well, I can't do anything here, so she goes on.
Now, whereabouts, like when you first formed the group 4 years ago, was it north side that you all lived?
Yeah.
That's strange now, because you've got a whole stack of bands that have made a name for themselves over the last year or two from the north side. But if you go back 7 or 8 years, they were all coming out of the west, the Westies, you know? What do you think has changed that? Why are North Shore kids now getting into forming groups and all that?
I'm trying to think of some other North Shore bands.
We had some of the boys on from Moving Pictures recently.
Yeah,
they're from over there. Midnight Oil and so on, you know. There's quite a lot of them around.
Yeah, I don't think there'd be any, you know, sort of deep reason for areas and that. I think it must be just what's happened, you know.
I just wondered why the swing was. It
could be something to do with
You're right, actually. A lot of people have moved from the city out to that way because it's just a change, I guess. You know, I think that bunches of people always keep moving.
And so it's just where the population happens to be. That's
I've moved over to the other side now, so Kirk's often crossed over.
Heading west again, you are. Is the band more disciplined these days than it was in the early days? I read that somewhere too. Or are you just going along as you were?
No, well, I think, you know, Kirk and Andrew have always had musically very strong in their ideas, and we're quite disciplined, and then like the rhythm section has probably just come to a point now where it is as tight as it relatively should be, you know, because the guys play too much, you know. Like you've got to pull them back, because it's too easy for them to, you know.
So you're really
that sort of thing where you're just young and you're learning and you're thinking, look, I can play this. But now it's got the point where, well, we all know we can play that, but let's pull back and make a song rather than some big wank for everybody else to play along with.
What about with the overseas, the groups, Aussie groups working overseas now, Chisel, The Church, Oils, etc., Ends, Men at Work, Success. Does that bother you that you haven't yet got overseas?
No, not at all. I mean, I figure that the longer it takes, the better, because the more, I guess, the more experienced you become, the more professional, the more aware. You know, I think in some ways, the longer it takes, the better, just because you'll be able to handle that situation so much easier.
Right. So next year's plans for overseas?
Yeah, well, you'll see. If we go, we're going to leave that night, you know what I mean?
You're just going to walk out.
You'll read about it. Yeah, just going to walk out the back door.
But I'm going to write about it, so tell me a couple of days in advance.
Yeah, we'll ring you up that week.
Thank you, because if I read about it somewhere else, I'll lose my job. Let's have a look at Don't Change, the current single for INXS, and then we'll have a song from Missing Persons. We'll be back to talk with a whole stack of lovely people, including the two guys, very shortly.